This is the BBC.
Yes, I am here at the original Bombay Bicycle Club, well, one of its old storage rooms. Unfortunately, we cannot film in the lovely club rooms as they are undergoing major refurbishment after last night's anniversary celebrations. Founded by the dishonored Major Benjamin Driscoll in 1824 in Tewkesbury, a hopeless military man, but my God, what a cyclist. While its main purpose, of course, always has been parading one's exotic bicycles, music has always had a special place in the club life. It all started with an amateur marching band that since, however, has developed into generations of professional musicians who these days even record charting albums. And for that, back to headquarters. Another 30 seconds of utter nonsense. Here's what you should really know about the band Bombay Bicycle Club. The members of the Bombay Bicycle Club met as 15-year-old school students in North London. Singer and guitarist Jack Stadman, guitarist Jamie McCall, who, by the way, is the nephew of singer Kirsty McCall, and drummer Surinder Saram. After a few different band names, they called themselves after a restaurant chain, Bombay Bicycle Club. In 2006, finally, bassist Ed Nash joined, and the steady lineup of the band was established. When they had released some first demos on the platform MySpace, who remembers that? They were approached to take part in a band competition of British TV channel Channel 4. They won and thus played as opening act at the then popular Virgin Festival, better known as V Festival. The following year, the band released their debut EP, The Boy I Used to Be, on their own independent record label. It was soon followed by another EP, How We Are, also in 2007, and the band appeared at several festivals. By 2008, all band members had finished school and could now fully commit to Bombay Bicycle Club, beginning with the UK tour and their first full-length album, I Had the Blues, But I Shook Them Loose. Their second album, Flaws, from 2010, was an acoustic affair reaching number 8 in the UK album charts and was nominated for the prestigious Ivor Novello Award. Their third studio album should again include more electric instruments. It was released in the UK in 2011. Well, always the shy, a bit nerdy and bookish indie quartet, the band tried indeed to do something a bit different with that third album. They asked the young singer-songwriter and vocalist Lucy Rose to join their ranks for the recordings, and you can hear her on background vocals throughout this album. But to not add to the tweeness factor that this kind of indie rock bands can have, they also teamed up with two, at that time, really hip producers. Jim Abbas, who, for example, had worked with bands like Kasabian, and Ben Allen, who had just recently helped shaping the really trendy sound of Animal Collective, with an artwork that always reminds me a little bit of vintage school books, for example, like biology school books or books for medical students from ancient times. Bombay Bicycle Club also wanted to become a bit more trendy sound-wise and get away from the dreamy acoustic sound of the predecessor album. Although the album for the first couple of seconds briefly deceives the listener into believing that this would be another low-key, moody acoustic affair, How Can You Swallow So Much Sleep begins with a quiet, very clean acoustic guitar line, a gorgeous tune. The whole song is built around that rather circular guitar line. And overall, you will find that this album works a lot with repetitive patterns and adding layers and textures to it. This is perfectly demonstrated on this opening track. Also, the lyrics get by with just a few lines that are repeated again and again. But then the drums come in with more a kind of a tricky breakbeat instead of your ordinary, a bit plodding indie rock drum pattern. And at this point, I'm all ears, Mr. Statman. The song could be about a depressive phase or maybe breaking up a relationship. But at the same time, it really sounds like the first rays of the morning sun tickling your eyes or your nose. The band produced a cute video clip to this song with stop motion animation and some puppets. And without wanting to be anticlimactic, this opener definitely is one of the absolute highlights on the album. There's a story in which my After this gorgeous and melodic intro, Bad Timing follows, which packs a bit more of a punch. There are effects and a little bit of distortion on the guitars, and overall, at least in the usual vocabulary of Bombay Bicycle Club, this track is pretty rock. A song about maybe unrequited love or obstacles to form a relationship, getting rejected maybe. There is a darker edge to this song. In terms of this album's sequencing, it's actually great timing. It's track number 2, and it already shows that Bombay Bicycle Club are going into different directions and bring a bit more energy and versatility to the table here. Yeah, Bad Timing. It's great modern indie rock. Why do you keep me back? With all your powers, I am pushing back. Your Eyes, which is next, even adds a bit more tempo and dynamics, especially on the drums. There's a lot of stuff going on. But this song is, again, a bit more lighthearted and a lot more playful in sound. Again, we are in the area of relationships running dry or getting complicated, breaking up possibly. But all of this is presented in a song that is full of energy and, interestingly, was never a single. I think this is another highlight on a different kind of fix. I'm there when your fingers snap. It's not where we left it at. I can see the love we trapped. Coming back. Lights Out, Words Gone continues the theme, the subject of relationships failing or breaking apart, obstacles in romantic relationships in a kind of very urban way, especially also the sound of this album is quite urban, especially, of course, in a early 2000s way. This song continues the playful and quite groove-oriented sound of the whole production on a different kind of fix. Drums and guitars provide a swaying groove, almost a bit influenced maybe by Afrobeat, which was also kind of a craze in the second half of the noughties. We hear Lucy Rose as background vocalist, and the whole production and also the keyboards that are added also landed a bit of a 1980s, a vague 1980s sound. The song was released as a single and made it into the top 90 in the UK singles charts, which, however, is not too bad for what is usually considered a, not really commercial indie band. I've already mentioned the 80s. The next track, Take the Right One, is pure shoegazing sound. The production really, I think, tries to evoke that late 80s, early 90s shoegaze style. Lots of reverb, layers of shimmering liquid guitars. Very echoey, very blurry production. Should make every indie fan quite happy. And this track then directly blends over into Shuffle. If you've ever heard anything by this band, this most likely is the one you know. Shuffle is the most successful single to date, made 69 in the UK, and was even more successful in the United States. This is quite interesting because the song actually doesn't start off too attractively. We hear a slightly discordant, very random, almost chaotic piano motif, piano lick, if you like, which runs through most of the song. But then Bombay Bicycle Club used this to almost get us on the indie dance floor. There's quite a groove and a bouncy groove to this song, an addictive melody. It's very catchy, at least for an indie pop track. And listen to what Ed Nash, the bass player, does in this song. There's also great musicianship involved, not only on Shuffle, but on actually all of the tracks on a different kind of fix. But this is really cleverly done, very smart songwriting and production. Probably a very good song to introduce somebody to Bombay Bicycle Club. Fading out the light, softly say, get it out my mind anyway. The following song, Beggars, starts more traditionally, more in the vein of older Bombay Bicycle Club material. We get just an acoustic guitar, slightly folky finger picking, and Jack Stadman's always a bit whiny voice. Maybe that's also where the Coldplay comparisons come from. I've read a few reviews, pieces of criticism on this album that basically argue that this album simply is an attempt to blend the sound of Coldplay with Animal Collective. So I don't know what, for example, Pitchfork reviewers are listening to sometimes. The track Beggars soon again changes the mood because it's actually quite an up-tempo song. The drums really push this track forward. And again, the arrangement, the production keep this song from just becoming a generic Brit indie track. The following Leave It winds or snakes its way in with another quite smart circular guitar lick, combination of guitars. The drums and the bass guitar on this song again are what make it for me and also sets it apart from your ordinary post Britpop indie rock band. Lucy Rose again can be heard as background singer, and her vocals really add some atmosphere to this track, which again seems to deal with non-relationships or disappointment in relationships, people rejecting each other. This song also was chosen as a single, and yeah, that guitar lick is the highlight here for me. Quite an interesting song. Fracture is a nice, more low-key, solemn track with an electric guitar that has a lot of reverb, a clean, more or less clean electric guitar, and some also rather subdued drums. It's your more pensive indie rock song, and yeah, a very good, solid album track. Jack Stadman once said in an interview about the album that a lot of what he played on the demos for the album actually was then also used for the final product, and he was a little bit proud of using very basic equipment and software to record something that ended up on the official album. And maybe Fractures has some of these elements because it sounds very direct, very minimalist, and could have been recorded maybe in a very simple studio or even in your own living room. What You Want continues the more, usual indie rock sound of the first decade of the 2000s. In the lyrics, again, we have the topic of relationship failure. There's a lot of talk about lies also in lyrics to other songs on this album. Again, it's a solid track if you are a fan of British indie guitar music. Maybe not the most exciting one on the album, but still a more than decent album cut. The same could more or less be said about track number 11, Favorite Day. Honestly, I have got no idea what this one is about. Very oblique lyrics. It's got a more plodding pace with kind of a slower marching rhythm underneath a quite simplistic melody. Again, not the strongest track on the album, and this leads us to the final one, a melancholic piano ballad. What else should you expect on a British indie rock album from the early 2000s? It's called Still. It's your I'm a sensitive student type of singer-songwriter guy and crying onto my piano because my girlfriend has betrayed me ballad. Fitting ending to this kind of album, though I personally maybe would have preferred something a bit more upbeat and something that leaves a bit more of a memorable impression. But that's a different kind of fix for you. There was another track called Bag that came from those sessions and later on was released as a non-album single, but I won't take that one into consideration here as I am concentrating, of course, on the regular album. A different kind of fix went to number 6 in the UK, becoming, I think, Bombay Bicycle Club's biggest, most successful release to date. It's a very good indie album, definitely worthy of being talked about here in the Indie Corner. Especially the first 3/4 of this album are basically excellent. Maybe the last 3 or 4 songs lose a bit of the drive and the appeal that all the others have got. But nonetheless, this is an excellent album. The various production touches make the songs here stand out from the ordinary, generic early 2000s indie sound. And if you've never heard of Bombay Bicycle Club, maybe check out some of the tracks I've mentioned or even the entire album. Highly recommended music from the noughties, and there's more good stuff where that came from. But more about that maybe another time here on Murdock's Music Minute.